and welcome back to another episode of the Access Vikings podcast. I'm Emily Leiker, joined by my Minnesota Star Tribune colleagues Andrew Krammer and Ben Goessling. We are recording on Saturday afternoon. Practice is done for the week for the Vikings. They are staring down that Monday Night Football debut for the season, the debut for J.J. McCarthy. A couple final notes from the week. Let's start with the injury report and some game statuses. Andrew, you and I were out there at practice. We saw Harrison Smith. It's the first time we have seen Harrison Smith with our eyes for the first time since, August 7th, I think. So tell us a little bit about what we heard about his status and then also that of left tackle Christian Darrisaw.
Yeah, we didn't see a whole lot from Harrison, but Kevin O'Connell did say afterward he did more than I thought he would, which was really encouraging. So that is a good sign. And we were trying to piece together what we've heard and how long he may or may not have been back in the building. You'd mentioned August 7th. I think the last time we saw him was around August 11th, actually, after that first preseason game. But Kevin O'Connell said on Wednesday of this week that he was back in the building. He was participating in walkthroughs and meetings for week one, but obviously did not do enough. And Ben, it sounded like from what O'Connell said, he just needs more practice time before he can play.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of getting back up to speed a little bit. I mean, Harrison Smith, as we've seen over the years, is just not an easy guy to keep off the field. He plays through a lot, but I think a lot of this is just when he's been off this long, trying to just get a little bit of work under his. I mean, O'Connell said it's not a mental thing because he's seen it all and done it all at this level for a long time. It's just kind of the physical work to get back into football shape a little bit. So I would imagine that takes him into next week. And, you know, I think if they felt good about a full week of practice next week, there's no reason to expect he wouldn't be out there for the home opener against the Falcons. I would think that would be a game he'd be targeting and want to play in because, you know, who knows? That may be his last home opener at US Bank Stadium, and wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, that they introduce the defense and he's the last one out of the tunnel. So, you know, I think that's probably where we're looking at this point. But yeah, I think they just wanted to get a little more work in. And we saw him, I think, what day would that have been, in the locker room? Probably Wednesday that we were in there. And he was, I think, coming off the field after some of the practice stuff, or at least was coming back into the locker room after practice. We did not see him practicing, but we saw him in the locker room that day. But yeah, so I think it's still just a little bit of kind of getting him back up to speed, and we'll see what it looks like for the Falcons game in all likelihood. If he's doubtful at this point, you don't see doubtful to active very often. Shout out Brett Favre, but you know, yeah, I wouldn't expect to see him Monday night.
I think the only time I have in covering this team, Ben, and you and I have done it, save for the 2012 season, which you covered and I did not. The only time we've seen that happen where a guy was doubtful and played was, I believe, Kyle Rudolph against his hometown team, Cincinnati Bengals, way back when. And Emily, I will not derail this podcast to talk about that season.
Because again, Teddy came back. They were up big against the Bengals. They were trying to clinch the division. They took Case Keenum out because Teddy had not played, and he got the Teddy chant, and he couldn't hear the play call coming in at home, and he was so excited. I think he threw an interception early. But yes, that would have been the game that Kyle Rudolph came back for. But the Favre one was back, and I think there was one in that 2010 season where maybe he'd been ruled out and he came back. But yeah, it doesn't happen very often.
Harrison Smith, doubtful. It was August 11th. The August 7th date is actually the Andrew Van Ginkel date. Yeah. We'll note just that we did find out this week per the practice report that was a neck issue he was dealing with. He was a full participant all 3 days, though. He will be back, obviously ready to go. Left tackle Christian Darrisaw is
week, in other words.
Yeah.
We'll
see.
Look it up. That's another one for the archives. That's 2020. Shout out Mike Zimmer, Daniel Hunter.
No.
Left tackle Christian Darrisaw is questionable. He practiced on Wednesday when we were out there, he had practiced Wednesday. And then I think he took a day off the next day and then has been back the 2 days since, which is kind of what we had expected. We talked about that on Wednesday's podcast. Was he's really been on a 1 day on, 1 day off schedule. But now that he's gotten those 2 straight days of work, and based on what we heard Kevin O'Connell say today, do we think we're going to see him on Monday night?
Yeah, I it'll be one of those where he's probably playing a little bit of the gamesmanship thing in terms of probably trying to keep it quiet as long as you can, because the Bears did a lot of this with Jalen Johnson and a lot of players being questionable. But I don't know. He said something later on in his press conference talking about what was it? Donovan Jackson, I think, playing next to Ryan Kelly and Christian Darrisaw. I mean, he kind of mentioned it as if Darrisaw was going to play. So I would think that he does, barring something where they're like, hey, we're still really concerned about this. I think if they give the green light, I would think Darrisaw will want to play. It seemed to me like, I mean, correct me if you guys feel different, but it seemed like the needle was maybe like signs point to yes in terms of like the Magic 8-Ball wording of those things. It seemed a little heading that way a little more than not.
Yeah, I would say I would
agree
feel more confident in the possibility today versus as in on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially after Wednesday's practice, Darrisaw talked about how he felt good after getting a lot of work in what was a pretty busy Wednesday session that they had with that extra day before Monday night. And it just seems like everything's been positive, where O'Connell said there was great moments in practice this week watching Darrisaw get out there, and he keeps saying, we'll wait and see how he feels tomorrow. And then we get to tomorrow and he says he feels great. So There just seems to be no reason why you would hold him out other than for some reason a setback occurring on Sunday. And this just seems to me like O'Connell has been trying to manage the emotions and just the mental part and mental side of things and not putting it on Christian that you have to be ready for week one.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably trying to keep the expectations from getting too high, like you said. But I mean, the only other thing to keep in mind there, maybe the turf. It's always a question at Soldier Field.
Yep.
And they've resodded it this week after hosting a lot of concerts over the last few days. I think it was Oasis and then 2 days of System of a Down. We talked about this, but so, Soldier Field turf is always a fun topic. But if they felt badly enough about that or concerned enough about that to say no, maybe you keep him out of that. But I think short of that, it seemed more likely than not that he would play.
Running back Xavier Scott and then defensive lineman Elijah Williams are both going to be out this week with injuries they suffered in the preseason finale against the Titans. Both those guys, though, we've seen out on the rehab field. When those injuries happened, Kevin O'Connell had described them as minor, so I don't foresee that being long-term past week one with either of those guys, but we'll certainly see next week. One guy who we just wanted to reiterate is not on the practice report, was not on it all week. There was a lot of questions about this, though, is star wide receiver Justin Jefferson, who obviously missed all of training camp with a hamstring injury. They played that very safe given his history and just the importance to this team, but he was not listed on the practice report. He is expected to be full go on Monday night, ready to go, help out JJ McCarthy, all of that. For either of you, we heard Justin talk yesterday a little bit more about that recovery and just how he's been feeling. And I guess what stood out to you about kind of his comments here heading into what'll be his first game of the year, obviously for everyone.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Well, I think he seemed pretty confident in how he's feeling, which is, I think that's notable because the hamstrings have been part of his story now, and I think it will be something they continue to pay attention to, as I talked about on the radio earlier this week, and the aggregators had some fun and said, wow, it sounds like major concerns coming out of Minnesota. No. Hamstrings are tricky. I am not breaking any news in the sports world here with this stuff. So they are, I think, going to continue to make sure that he's feeling good, that he is stretched out, that he is continuing to strengthen those muscles. It is something they will pay attention to make sure that it continues to look good for him, as it appears to be heading into Monday night, justified by the fact that he was not on the injury report. So he's good to go for Monday night. And I think the confidence that he had about what he's gone through the last few weeks here was notable. He kind of gave credit to the training staff for helping him get back to this point. He said it's dark when you miss practice, because he's not a guy that likes to miss practice, as we've talked about. But I think the fact that he is feeling as good as he is, and Kevin O'Connell got asked about this today too, just in terms of him being, conscientious enough, I guess, to say, hey, I'm feeling a little bit of a little bit of a tweak. We'll go to the Mike Zimmer term, but not like a catastrophic tweak. The fact that he put himself out as early as he did probably kept it from being worse. So I think the conscientiousness to say, yeah, we should shut this down, may have been to his benefit in terms of missing any time during the season, or not missing any time during the season, as I should say. Aggregators.
Yeah, Ben, you mentioning Justin's drive to practice is absolutely related to him noticing the injury, taking himself out, and not pushing through it in a way that I can't remember how he worded it, but he did talk this week about how that 2023 hamstring injury kind of informed how he went about this one, of realizing, oh, this can be much worse. Let's not make it worse, since he's already missed 7 games in his career to one a few years ago. So I think the conscientiousness of it that you mentioned is huge. And the fact that it happened, what was it, the second day of camp?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It was like right away. So for them to shut it down right then and there and ensure he'd be ready for this, that was the plan the entire time. And why he's been basically quiet for 5 to 6 weeks was to be ready for Monday night.
We're going to stick with the injury topic here for a second as we transition into the mailbag portion of our episode. We have one from Joel S. Any idea what CJ Ham's injury is, and how big of an absence do you think it is for their plans, considering they want to be a competent running team the first few weeks, considering Hawkinson isn't much of a blocker? Some 11 personnel runs with Oliver in ? We know CJ's injury is a knee. We were told that when he was placed on injured reserve, but we don't know beyond that. I will say, even in the depths of training camp, when he was first out and sidelined, he was still out there more than some of the other guys who were hurt, like walking around. Like, we have not seen him with a brace on, I believe. Correct me if anyone has, but we've seen him moving around and stuff. So it doesn't seem to be too serious or intense, but it was enough that they felt they needed to place him on IR and give him those 4 weeks.
Yeah, my understanding is, if they had not used the IR designation, that health-wise, he was expected to be ready to go in like a week. So I don't think this is something where they did the IR move because they expected to take that long. I think it's reasonable to expect he is back as soon as he's able to do that. Some of it was, okay, if they are tight on roster spots, which they felt like they were in terms of trying to get all the guys on the 53-man that they wanted to, let's be cautious with it, give him a little more time to let everything heal and let everything be ready to go, and kind of use the benefit of the roster spot. Because when you do things like keeping 3 quarterbacks on the active roster, you have to find space somewhere. And I think there'll be, you'll have to make those decisions when Jordan Addison comes back and when CJ Ham comes back, but it buys them a little bit of time. I don't think the reason for the IR move was necessarily because they thought the injury was bad enough to keep him out that long. It sounds like it was relatively minor in the grand scheme of things.
That's good news for a Vikings team that wants to run the ball, right? And wants to establish that physicality that they just have not done before. And doing it without Ham, as Joel mentions, it's going to be a notable absence for them, and especially on special teams too. And I don't think CJ's missed a game in the Kevin O'Connell era until now. So this will be the first time that they've gone through that. And I do think you're still going to see some 2-back sets, because we saw this in training camp. We saw both Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones on the field at the same time, and they found creative ways to use them, obviously with Aaron being more of that receiver option. So I think they'll still do some 2-back stuff and try to mix it up and try to confuse the Bears. And who knows, maybe they'll have some more tricks up their sleeve with some QB read options or something. But I do think we're going to see some wrinkles that still involve 2 running backs out there.
What about with Josh Oliver? Do we see him kind of doing anything more in that absence?
I think playing a lot is probably part of it too. I mean, you could go 2-back stuff. You could play a lot of 12 personnel. You could play 13 personnel if you wanted to go 3 tight ends. I think there's a possibility of that. I do think they want to be physical. I think this is going to look different than we've seen it with the Vikings, where there is more of that emphasis on let's punch people in the mouth. And Josh Oliver got paid this offseason in part because he's quite good at doing that in a football sense, not actually punching people in the mouth, because most of the time that gets you ejected from games, unless you do it open-handed.
Open-handed, yeah.
Yes, yeah. That's the move, as we learned from Brazil last night, is if you punch people open-handed, you don't get ejected from games. If you spit, you do get ejected. We've learned a lot about what gets you tossed out of games these first 2 games of the season. I think they want to be physical, and I think Josh Oliver is a big part of setting that tone. So, yeah, I expect he'll play quite a bit.
Most punch you in the mouth Vikings players besides Oliver. Does anyone come to mind?
Yes, Ivan Pace.
Yep, yeah. That's a good one.
I think Jordan Mason. They want Jordan Mason to be a punch you in the mouth type of guy. Yeah.
Yep.
I think Will Fries has a little bit of that to him.
Oh, okay.
Christian Darrisaw, when we see him pancaking a couple guys at a time. I think there's some of that with Christian Darrisaw as well. There's probably others.
Ryan Kelly for sure.
Kelly. Yeah, there's a little bit of that with offensive linemen. Probably I need to get to know the new defensive lineman a little bit more, but Javon Hargrave would be the other one that just the physical presence that he casts, I think is pretty significant. So I don't quite know yet in terms of just the nastiness on the field, but I think that would be another name I'd put in the list.
Yeah, if they acquired you this offseason, you must be able to punch people in the mouth.
Yeah.
That was actually the top of the list.
I mean, Quakey described it as we don't know what kind of fight we're going to be in. We have to be able to win multiple types of fights. Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that he picked the word fight, I don't think was an accident.
Yeah.
This next one's from Red. What is the expected usage for Adam Thielen in week 1 and post Addison's suspension return? Does Nailor get bumped to wide receiver 4?
I think Thielen plays a lot this week. To answer the first part of that, I think he may start. I think he's going to play a lot. So, if this is a fantasy motivated question, take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I don't feel comfortable trying to project what kind of role Jalen Nailor will have. We do know he's healthy. We do know he took every rep in practices this week, had full practices. He told me after Saturday's practice that it was a hand fracture that he had suffered back in that joint session against the Patriots on August 14th. He didn't catch for a couple weeks. And so he's only been back doing that for about a week or so. And then he obviously practiced this week. So, but I don't know about him because we know Thielen is so versatile, is such a reliable target, is somebody who can step in and, as Ben said, play a lot right away. I wouldn't be shocked if he usurps Nailor as that wide receiver 2 and Nailor's the wide receiver 3 for this 3-game run. And then they could see what Adams got left in the tank for 3 games before judging who's going to be wide receiver 3 once Addison comes back. So it's a good problem to have if you're the Vikings. And that's a reason why they, I don't want to say overpaid, but it's the reason why they paid quite a bit to go get him from Carolina.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things, I don't think we mentioned this on Wednesday's pod, but one of the things we heard a lot this week is that people were surprised by how much of this playbook Adam Thielen recalled coming back in and being able to pick it up really quickly. And of course, he gets up there and he says, well, every offense is the same. It's just different terminology. You just have to do the recall on the terminology. But offensive coordinator Wes Phillips said it. TJ Hawkinson said it. Like, people have been really impressed with how much of this he has retained. And so I think when you pair that with the fact that he does also have significant reps, and at least in like summer training sessions with McCarthy, like, they are going to want to use him a lot, I think, even once Jordan Addison returns.
You give him a compliment, he says, well, it wasn't really that big of a deal. He is one of us, man. That is a Minnesotan through and through. Give me a compliment. No, hey, my wife's from North Dakota, so she's not one of us, as I like to remind her often, but she does the easiest way to get her to tell you how easy it was to make something for dinner is to tell her, hey, this was great. It's like, oh, this was super easy. Here's the way you do it. I mean, it's the classic Minnesota thing. So Adam Thielen being like, oh, yeah, well, this actually was a lot harder than I thought it was. I didn't really do that much. He remains one of us.
The other big Adam Thielen press conference topic this week was his return to using the coffee makers at TCO Performance Center, which apparently, to quote TJ Hawkinson, had not been used in 2 years until Adam Thielen returned to the building. So
he is known as the local barista.
If Justin Jefferson looked great with or without Adam, but Adam said, I always give Justin a little shot of cold brew before every game because he's not a coffee drinker. So we'll see how that affects Justin now that Adam's back around.
Cold brew, it makes you zippy. It's got a punch to it if you are not used to caffeine, especially. But
and they got two night games
more concentrated when it's cold brew, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
I'm not a coffee drinker, but I'm married to one, so I learn these things by osmosis.
From Adam G, is the coaching staff and front office that happy with the secondary, specifically corner, or has there not been the option of adding better/proven talent? They've told us they're happy. They've told us they're satisfied.
Yeah. It is a great question. It's a great question because, Ben, they just did not spend a whole lot of resources at the position other than spending market value to re-sign Byron Murphy.
Yeah.
Once they did that, it was a relatively cheap deal for Isaiah Rodgers, which you guys mentioned, or Ben, you said right from the league meetings that spring, they intend to use Rodgers beyond what this contract says. And then there's Jeff Okudah, same deal now, where they're intending to use him beyond what his contract says, which is like $2 million or something like that. So to me, they went pretty cheap at the position. We did not hear, at least I didn't hear, them going after bigger fish in the free agent market. I think it was a situation where in the first round where Jahdae Barron is slipping, you're thinking, could they go with him? Maybe. And then they just don't even address the secondary at all, if I'm recalling right, in that entire draft. So Ben, I don't know how they feel about it exactly, but what we do know is that they feel confident, certainly in their top two corners.
Yes, it is. It's interesting to me. I think the thing I would add to that is we have seen this regime, if they identify something they believe to be a problem, they are not shy about addressing it. And we talked about this, I think, a little bit earlier this week. They're not everything's fine, nothing to see here, stop overreacting. They are the ones that say, no, we need more corners. Let's go get like 6 of them at the beginning of training camp and then still get Stephon Gilmore. I suppose they could still try to get Stephon Gilmore if he wants.
He's out there.
Yeah, I mean, he is still out there. You're getting to a point now where I think if he wants to play, it's going to be for somebody where he already knows the scheme. So this would make a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, the fact, and I think I've said this too, but the fact that they bring Fabian Moreau back and they say, well, we did get Fabian Moreau on the practice squad, so we have a little more depth. They did this last year too. And last year it was, we don't feel like we have enough. Fabian Moreau was there. So if they are feeling like, okay, now he's an answer, where last year it was, well, we still need more. They must feel better about it, or just didn't like their options enough in terms of what they could get to go out and address something else. I think if there's a way to do it at some point, maybe it's a Stephon Gilmore, who knows if you can make a trade at some point through the course of the season. I don't think they turn that down, but I do think it's notable they haven't addressed it. I mean, I think based on the history of this group and the way they have been pretty quick to act when they don't feel good about something, you can infer from that they must feel okay.
Yeah, what we do know is they at least got younger with Rodgers. They got faster with Rodgers. I don't know about faster with Okudah, but younger, more aggressive, more physical on the perimeter in terms of run support, all those things. So they're going to roll with it for at least week 1.
Isaiah Rodgers bared us media members a nice farewell as we were kicked out of practice today at the end of the viewing period. He said, bye, y'all, see you later, or something like that. And we were like, goodbye, Isaiah. But okay, last one. And I think
the regular season. It's
last one. This is from quote unquote not Mark. That's their social media name. And I think this is a good tone setter, bringing us back, looking towards Monday night specifically. What was the biggest difference in Caleb Williams' 2 performances against the Vikings last year? Did the Vikings defense or Bears offense do anything differently? Was it a function of game script? I'll let you guys think on that for a second. I'll vamp for us. Obviously, we've talked a lot about how big of a game this is for JJ McCarthy because we are the Access Vikings podcast. We're focused on the Vikings. But there's also a lot of quarterback questions on the other side of this matchup with Caleb Williams entering year 2. Number 1 draft pick that did not live up to the standard I think people were hoping last year. Now with this more notable former offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson. Like there are just as many questions and maybe even more intriguing questions with Caleb Williams in year 2 than there is with JJ in this debut. But going back to that question, those two games last year, where do we think we saw differences in Caleb Williams?
Well, I was looking up a little bit of this morning. I think they blitzed him, or they pressured him like 40% of the time in the second game, and they got a lot of pressure in the first one too. He just got away from a few different things, and I remember the one Andrew Van Ginkel had a great line on him on the sideline. He gets away from that. I think he scrambled for a first down, and then there was the one that he's rolling, I think, to his right and flipped it to DeAndre Swift for a big gain as well. So he made a lot of kind of extended plays where they had chances to take him down even more than they did in that first game, and they couldn't do it. I think the second game, he did not make the big downfield broken plays. He only threw for like 190 yards on 31 attempts, I think, in the second game. So they kept things underneath a lot more. I think he only had 3 or 4 completions longer than 10 yards in that game. It didn't attempt many passes of that nature either. So, by that point, it's Thomas Brown instead of Matt Eberflus. So maybe a little bit of a difference there, but the offensive structure wouldn't have changed as a result of that. So, I think they did a better job of keeping him from making kind of those backyard football plays that he made so many of in that first game, and they just had a more rigid structure. It's going to be really interesting to see how he does in this offense, because a lot of it is very similar in a lot of the concepts to what the Vikings do. It's from that Sean McVay type tree that the Vikings certainly stem out of, and heck, half the league does at this point. The Shanahan Kubiak stuff is everywhere, and this is part of that too. So does he play with everybody together now, rhythm and timing, in the way that Kevin O'Connell talks so much about his quarterbacks playing? I'm curious to see how this goes, especially after, I don't know if you guys saw Ty Dunn's piece, his series this week on the Caleb stuff. If people haven't checked that out, do, because it was very interesting. You need a subscription. Ty does a lot of great work. That's one of those that I would say, yeah, pony up for it, support what he does. But because that one was, he got a lot of interesting info about how things went awry for the Bears last year that I thought was quite fascinating.
Yeah, when Terran Armstead, the former Dolphins tackle, is talking about watching the Bears-Dolphins joint practice in this summer and saying that I still don't see Caleb processing the field or seeing things pre-snap or really doing the heady, mindful, intelligent things a quarterback needs to do at the line that are discipline-oriented. It tracks with everything Ty Dunn wrote. It tracks with what we saw on the field, where, spectators were not sure, is it coaching, is it players? And obviously Ty talked to a lot of the coaches that worked with Caleb last year.
Yeah, there was certainly that component of the story. That's worth mentioning, that people had some things to say that they got off their chests.
And probably rightfully so. I'm sure those coaches heard all year last year about how they were the problem. And we talked about it from Bears games where we're like, what are they telling Caleb Williams? And obviously we can't know, but they had a lot to say anonymously, certainly about Caleb Williams. And some of it, there's a lot of smoke there with Caleb in terms of being managed or not being able to be managed as a quarterback, as a young quarterback at this age. And so I do wonder how it went for Ben Johnson this summer. I do wonder how it's going to look in week 1. And there's so much talk about McCarthy, Emily, as you said, but boy, Chicago is under the microscope to start this game in a primetime setting. First game with a new head coach, first game with this quarterback that needs to be your savior. And we've been through the rookie year now. That's over. Move on. Show us things now. And that's kind of where everybody's at with Chicago. I'm fascinated to see, because they're so talented. We know they're going to be well coached this time based on what Ben Johnson did in Detroit. But Detroit and Jared Goff and Ben Johnson took some time to build what they did. And I just don't think it's going to look great, certainly, or it's not going to look like a carbon copy or a microwaved version in week 1. And I think Brian Flores and this group of, lack of a better phrase, this group of dogs that he's got that are just ready to pounce on Caleb Williams at risk of sounding like a homer. I'm pretty excited to see what it looks like for this Vikings defense against a Chicago group that is still trying to find their footing.
Yeah, we got the sense this week that they're feeling pretty good. about what they may be able to do to affect Caleb Williams on Monday night. That sentiment came through pretty clearly this week.
And just all camp, all three of us watching this defense, just get after it. And it's tough. We're sitting there going, okay, how much of this is the rookie or young QB in McCarthy versus this veteran-laden defense? But man, it didn't matter if it was Ryan Kelly. It didn't matter if it was Brian O'Neill out there. This defensive front was getting after guys.
Mm-hmm. And they were talking about it every single time they did it. I mean, that group was playing with, to quote Tim Brewster, their chili was hot. So they, if you want to go bear hunting, you got to bring something to get the bear. You can't go in with a pellet gun if you're trying to get the bear. If you want to get some, you got to bring some. And I think they're going to bring some on Monday night.
Hey, Tim Brewster never won a game 66-0. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Tim Brewster, a lot of those games that he would schedule, he would lose to the MAC teams. But the Gophers went probably a step below the MAC teams with that one today. I saw Max Brosmer when they came off the practice field. I told him what the score was, and he was like, "What?" I mean, I told him 49 rip at halftime, and he was like, "What happened?" So, yeah, go check the box score. A lot of things happen. So.
Lots of big storylines on Monday night for both teams. There will be lots of big reactions to both teams, no matter what happens afterwards. We will try to boil them down to very balanced level takes for you all as best we can post game from Soldier Field. All three of us will be there, so we'll do our Access Vikings post game stand up like we normally do. Between now and then,
whatever suite they let us into,
right?
And it is always an adventure. This will be your first trip to Soldier Field, right?
Yes.
Emily? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is there are better working accommodations for the fourth estate in the NFL than the ones we will have Monday night. Let's just put it that way.
Good to know. In the meantime, check out thestartribune.com. We have a lot of great stories up there right now about JJ McCarthy, but also about some of the key pieces around him and
my
just
QB project
figures. Yes, read Ben's QB project, which also has relevant info, I guess, to Caleb Williams, even if not directly. It's all tied. The QB industrial complex is a real thing we're dealing with now in the football world. But read all that work. Stay tuned on the Strib Sports Instagram page. I'm sure there'll be videos and different coverage up there. But we'll talk to you all after Monday night's game.